Catullus 101, an elegy to a beloved brother. Catullus is a poet known for his playfulness, his snark, or his passion for love, or obsession, if you so choose. He rarely writes of serious matters, but in Poem 101, we are finally granted insight to another part of Catullus rarely shown, one where he is truly mourning. The poem is an elegy to Catullus's brother, who died at a young age in the Roman province of Bithynia, and was laid to rest there. The cause of his brother's death is unknown, but we do know that while serving under the commander Gaius Memmius from the summer of 57 BC to the summer of 56 BC in Bithynia, he visited his brother's grave to perform funeral rites as he was not present at his burial. This poem was a part of those rites. In its native tongue, the poem goes as such. Multas per gentes et multa per aequor rectus, ad venio has miseras, frater ad inferios. Ut te postremo donarem munere mortis, et mutam nequi qualoquer cinerem. Quando quidem fortuna mihi te tabstulitit ipsum, heo miser indigni frater adempte mihi. Nunc tamen in terra haec prisco quae more parentum, tradita sunt Christi munerad inferios. Eccipe frater no multum manantia fletu, et quin perpetuum frater av atque vale. This poem is written in the meter of elegiac couplets, which is very fitting as it is a meter Catullus commonly reserved for his more serious poems about his love for Lesbia, but is now being used to demonstrate his love for his brother. It was also a very common meter for other poets, such as Virgil, to express grief and sadness. Scanned, the poem looks as such. Note the repeated use of the word frater, and its repeated exact placement within the lines it appears. This was a very common thing done in funeral rites by the family of the dead, along with the phrase ave atque vale, or hailing goodbye. Frater possesses more meaning just within its own meter, though. As Nicholas Howe put it beautifully, the movement here is from the half foot with its abrupt and unfinished quality to the noun frater, which begins as dactyl. This, in turn, is followed by the final syllable in the dactyl, a or odd, with their tonal softness, which is warranted by memories of his brother. The idea of his brother and his short life do not make Catullus bitter or enraged, but rather make him remember the love he held for him, the cutoff before the frater and the contrast of the A sound after. Notice now the repeated M sounds. This creates a sort of soft rhythm by itself, one of love, similar to the A after frater. This could also hint towards the word mors, mortis in this poem, being important, especially as it is one of the two examples of M alliteration in the poem. The other two examples of alliteration could also possess some meaning. Ave atque is an obvious one, as it is, as previously mentioned, part of the funeral rites. The alliteration of mutam manentia could also be emphasizing just how much pain and grief Catullus feels, represented through the dampness of the funeral rites. Now, to get into the meat of the poem, in English, here is my translation. Having been carried through many nations and through many seas, I come to, brother, these miserable offerings to the dead, so that I might present you with the last service of death, and I might speak to silent ash in vain. Since fortune has taken you yourself away from me. Oh, alas, pitiful brother who has been undeservedly taken away from me. Now at any rate, receive these, which are sorrowful funeral rites that have been handed down by ancient tradition of ancestors, which run with many brotherly tears. And for other brother, hail and goodbye. Going back to the fraters, Catullus 101 is broken up into three parts, similar but not the same as the tricolon crescens in Poem 5. The first part is Catullus addressing his brother and how he arrived to his tomb, starting the poem off as being one entirely based on apostrophe. In the second section, the language grows more complex as Catullus's sadness increases. The purpose clause that starts out this portion tells his brother that he comes to perform the familiar funeral rites not performed at the time of his burial, and he comes to also attempt to speak to mute ash. Romans of these times were cremated, so Catullus was likely leaving funeral offerings and reciting this poem to an urn rather than a tomb. The final line of this portion begins with an exclamation Romans commonly associated with grief in particular, and is Catullus attempting to speak to his brother one final time even though he knows he is lost. The final part of the poem is the most complex and is also where Catullus's grief reaches its height. The word order of this portion is very complex, with the kippe being so far from hike, and being an imperative, plus the many other clauses interjected. This represents Catullus struggling to accept his brother's death and the fact that he must perform these rites to say goodbye to his brother once and for all. The struggle is why the poem ends so abruptly with Ave Atque Ale, the final saying of the ritual. He can't bring himself to stay around the tomb for a long time because of the pain, so he performs the rite to honor his brother, but can't bring himself to say a proper goodbye. So while the ending is short, like poem 85, he can put so much meaning into these few lines. Catullus would later go on to live likely for a few more years before passing, which some scholars say is partially due to the traumatic and painful loss of his brother.